will be uploaded directly onto this page. So it'll link you to a YouTube channel where I'm uploading all of the content week after week. So you'll see there's going to be a continued running list of all the recordings starting at the top, and then going to the bottom you'll find some more details on the Viz contest that'll be coming, and then the landing page where you can register for future sessions as well, and then how you can go about requesting a student license. So if anybody has any issues accessing the recordings, please let me know. Or if you don't have access to LinkedIn, again, let me know, and I will go ahead and shoot these out to you directly. So today, hey Claire, can you hear me?
Yep, I can. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
cool. Yep, just making sure. All right. Somebody said, so if you can't hear me, I would try to reconnect to your audio and just do the dial-in number, because it does appear the audio is working correctly. So today, Claire's going to cover a couple topics, go into a little bit more depth onto calculations, parameters within Tableau to kind of get you to that next level of learning, to help you take your Vizes and what you're doing to the next step. So I'm going to pass it over to Claire now, and while Claire's presenting, I'm going to help her and monitor the chat. So I will be monitoring that throughout the call. So we'll get to those as we can if there's a natural break in when she's presenting, and if not, there'll be some time at the end for Q&A. So Claire, all you. And you are on mute, just a heads up.
To interns.
I just unmuted you. You were muted there for a minute, Claire.
Oh, sorry about that. Well, welcome everybody. Love chatting with you guys, especially the interns. I think you guys are awesome. And I hope that you guys find this talk valuable today. Basically, what we're going to do is walk through some of the basic concepts in Tableau Desktop, which are mapping, filtering, calculations, and parameters. And if you'd like to follow along in your own copy of Tableau Desktop, you can certainly do that. I'm going to be working off of the Superstore dataset, which comes packaged with Tableau Desktop. So for any of you who are very, very new to desktop, and I'm sure there are a lot of you, this is the main screen you're going to see when you open it up. And we see all of the previous workbooks that I have worked on. To the right, you're going to see a bunch of training videos and resource links. Those are extremely helpful. And to the left, we have all of our connection options. So we can connect to lots of flat files, or we can connect to a database. There are lots of options here. But if you don't see something that you're trying to connect to, you can also choose this ODBC connector. Most of you probably will be connecting to flat files, but for today, I am going to connect to Superstore. And this is our kind of office supply chain. It's fictitious, but they sell things like copiers and paper and binders and that kind of thing. I have kind of jumped here into the brand new sheet 1 here, but if I take a step back into the data source pane, you're going to see where we kind of customize our connection to that file or that database that we just chose. So you see here I have my Superstore Excel file, and I have the different sheets that exist within that Excel file. Right now, I just have that orders table dragged out here, and that contains all of the transactions for our Superstore. You can see everything that people have ordered, the products within those orders, and so on. I also have other tables here for my people, I think that's my salespeople, and any returned items. If I wanted to, I could just drag out one of these other tables and join it and specify that join key. So this is going to be really useful when you all are connecting to your own data and getting those tables connected properly. So I am going to take out this returns table because all I want to do today is our orders. And I'll head over into sheet 1. So I'm going to start with mapping because mapping is pretty simple to get started. Over here on the left, you're just going to see all of the fields from that Excel file I connected to. The fields are just all the columns. And Tableau has organized them here into dimensions and measures. Your measures are these fields that you might aggregate or do math on. So if I want to know the sum of sales, I might drag it out and see my total sales. Whereas dimensions are less, you wouldn't really do math on them. So I could drag out, my categories to break out that sum of sales and see it broken down by technology, office supplies, and furniture. There are also things like regions and order dates. They're all dimensions. So to get started with mapping, I'll clear this sheet. And you'll see here that I have a few geographical fields here. I have country, state, city, and postal code. And Tableau has automatically recognized them as geographical fields. You see the little globe symbol. But if it did not recognize those, I could just click here, head to geographic role, and specify that this is a country/region. So all you really have to do to start mapping in Tableau is to double click on one of these geographic fields, and Tableau is going to map that for you. It's just going to automatically place these latitude and longitude fields up here on rows and columns. And I can specify my mark type, so if I don't like this little circle, I can head down to the map option to choose a filled map. You'll also notice here in my dimensions that I have my geographic fields organized into a hierarchy. And in order to create a hierarchy, first of all, you just take one of your fields, drag it, and drop it onto another field. Let's do this. Tableau is going to ask you, what do you want to name this hierarchy? In this instance, I've named it location. So we have all of our geographic fields down here under this location hierarchy. And because of that, you see country here has a plus sign. And I am able to click on that plus sign and drill down into the next level of that hierarchy. At this point, it might be useful to drop one of my measures onto color. So I could say profit onto color and see a nice range here. Looks like Texas kind of pops out to me as being low profit. And we could even drill down further. If we go down to the city level, we're going to see a bunch of little dots all over the country. And in this type of view, it's useful to add something onto the size card here on the marks card. So I might put sales on there. Looks like we don't have a lot of variation in our size. And it looks like our sum of profit is pretty middle of the road for all of these marks. It's kind of this gray region. So I would say sticking with the state level for this view might be the most useful. But of course, like you see here, we can go all the way down into postal code if we needed to. Now, something I also like to point out about mapping is that up at the top, we have a menu that has lots of different options here. And if we head down to map layers, you can really customize the way that this map looks. We could head into maybe our dark view map. We can remove different layers. So, maybe we don't want to see different labels. We can remove the state names, the country name. We can determine how, transparent this is or how washed out. And we can add different layers like streets and highways and, area codes. And we also have a few kind of data layers you can add in here. So maybe I want to know per capita income. It's going to kind of overlay that data on top of this map. And of course, we might want to set this color scale to be something that looks a little nicer. So let's head back. And so we did some very basic mapping. We got into that formatting pane. But now let's look at filtering, because filtering is going to be very, very critical when you're kind of building out dashboards in Tableau. So for this map, I think, let's see, we have this region field, and it's kind of just hanging out by itself. But I know that region is, part of my location data. So let's drag region up here into our location hierarchy. And instead of having profit on color, let's put region on color. And I'm going to quickly change the map type back to light so that we can see everything easier. All right, so to do a simple filter, we're just going to head to region, right click, and select show filter. So now, way over to the right, we see all of the different regions of the United States, and we can select or deselect different ones to filter down. We could also reformat this filter to be a different type of filter, essentially. So maybe I want a single value list. So we're only allowed to select one value at a time. I could also format this as a drop-down. So let's choose single value drop-down. I like that because it saves a lot of space. And we could add as many filters on here as we want to. So maybe category. And I can see, only the states that sell categories, which, most of them sell all of our categories. Now I'm going to put profit back onto color. And this is going to become a little bit more useful. So now if I drill down into my technology, we're going to see just the profit for the technology category. Or furniture, looks like we're having some pretty bad profits in furniture, and so on. So we could continue adding filters. It's also worth mentioning here that your filters can be dimensions or measures. So right now we have these two blue fields on the filter shelf, which are these dimensions. But we could easily drop profit onto filters as well. Choose a sum. And now I can specify what values of profit I would like to see. Now, you'll notice I just added this filter here, but I'm not seeing anything show up to the right. I'm actually going to have to right-click on this and select Show Filter. So hopefully that process of adding a filter onto your sheets makes sense. It's a fairly simple process. Really, any filters that you want to have on a sheet should go up here in your filters shelf. And you can always at any point right-click and edit that filter. Now, let's move on to our calculations and how we do that in Tableau. So you'll notice over here in my measures, we actually have a field here with a little equal sign next to it. I don't know if you guys can see that through the WebEx, but there's a tiny little equal sign next to this number, and that means that this field is a calculation. It didn't previously exist in that Excel file that we brought in. So I'm just going to open it up, and this is a profit ratio calculation. It's just our sum of profit over sum of sales. But if I do something wrong in this calculation, like remove the sum, Tableau is going to tell me that there's an error. And if I click on this, it's going to tell me exactly what I've done wrong. So this is a really useful way to troubleshoot your calculations to get where you're going. let's go ahead and write a calculation. So I'm going to open up a new sheet, and I'll just build out a simple scatter plot. So I've put my sales on this kind of y-axis, which is our rows, and I've put profit on our x-axis, which is our columns. And we get a single point for the total sum of sales and the total sum of profit. And I can break this out however I want to. I'm going to do customer name, and we get an individual point for the sum of profit and the sum of sales for each customer. I'm going to actually swap the rows and columns by clicking this toolbar button. And I'll format this as solid circles. So let's actually write a calculation that gives us some more useful information than just kind of glancing through these points. I'll open up a new calculated field here, and I'll call this our profit KPI. So all I'm going to do here is say if our sum of profit is greater than, let's say, 2,000, then goal met, else if sum of profit is greater than 1,000, then needs improvement, else does not meet goal. Something like that. Of course, you can add as many of these else if statements in here as you'd like to, but this is kind of just a generic example of how you might write one of these KPI calculations. So if I click OK here, we're going to notice this new field appear under measures, the same as our profit ratio calculation. So now I can really do a lot with this. I can add it onto color, and I can see these broken out in those different categories that I specified. And I can edit those colors. So maybe needs improvement should be yellow, does not meet goal, red, and goal met is green. Something like this can really be useful and add context to your data, so you're not just staring at a bunch of data, you know. We also might head over to this analytics pane, and we could add in an actual line that designates our, I think it was 2,000, goal mark. So it's very clear where that goal line is. We also have the option to add a trend line. This might be useful for adding context to your data as well. Now, it doesn't have to be broken out by these different colors. You could have a single trend line. So I will just drag that off so it's not cluttered. But you get the point. You have a lot of flexibility here. So hopefully, when you open up this calculated field area, hopefully this looks a little bit familiar to any of you who have worked in Excel before, because a lot of these functions are similar to Excel functions. And a little tip that I have for all of you is when you're in the calculated field area and you're not sure what to do, first of all, if you Google your issue, the Tableau community forums are very, very helpful for getting you where you're trying to go. But also, if you know what function you're supposed to use and you're not sure how to use it, there's always a little description and example here for you. I would also just reinforce the idea that when you're writing a calculation, definitely check on that error that appears at the bottom, just because that can really point you in the right direction. All right, so now let's talk about parameters. Parameters are kind of a way for you to create like a specialized switch or a specialized drop-down for people to use. So let me see. We've done basic calculations, we've done a basic map, and now for a basic parameter, let's open up a new sheet. And maybe I want to have a simple bar chart. Let's drag a subcategory out here. And now let's stick our profit on columns. This is nice, and this gives me some good information, but maybe sometimes I want to put this type of sheet into a dashboard, but I want the end user to be able to choose what measure they're looking at. I've specified profit here, but maybe I want them to be able to say, no, I want to look at sales, or no, I want to look at discounts. That's where we're going to create a parameter. So up here in that drop down, instead of choosing calculated field, I'll choose create parameter. And I'll call this select a measure, because I want the end user to read this and then go into that drop down to select their measure. And these values are just going to be a list that I create with the options I want to see in that drop down. So I want to show sales, profit, and discount. So I'll click OK. And then down here at the very bottom, we see our new parameter. I'll right click here and select Show Parameter Control. So now we have this nice drop down that we created, but all it is like a switch, but there's no power behind it. We can switch these all we want, but nothing's going to happen. What we have to do is kind of power this switch with a calculation. We have to tell Tableau what to do when each of these options are selected. So let's open up a calculated field. And I'll call this selected measure. So now I'm going to use Tableau's case function and refer to that parameter, select a measure. So all we have to do here is say when sales, then show my sum of sales. When profit, then sum of profit. And when discount, then show average discount. And end it with our end statement. Of course, if I didn't add this in here, Tableau is going to tell me what to do. All right, so hopefully this is pretty straightforward. We're just telling Tableau what to do when each of these options show up in our parameter. So I'll click OK here, and we see our new calculation we just made. So now if I drag this up to columns, we'll see a new bar chart here that just indicates the selected measure, which is currently sales. And I'll remove that original profit. So now I can change to see profit again. I can show discount, and really whatever that end user wants to see. So that's kind of a basic introduction to parameters. So at this point, if we wanted to, we could compile everything into a dashboard. So we have over to the left the 3 sheets that we created, and all we have to do is drag and drop them here into the view. Tableau is going to insert every single legend that is associated with each of these sheets. I'm going to remove some of them so that they aren't cluttered. With this actual profit legend, I want it to be clearly associated with the map. So I'm going to select floating here and just drop it here on top of the map. I'll do the same thing with this profit KPI. And I notice that our bar chart actually has a scroll bar. So I'm going to make sure to fit it to the entire space. Awesome. So one last thing I want to point out is that all of these sheets can work together. So if I click on my map here, you'll see our little gray sheet menu appear, And if I click the little filter icon to turn it on, then I can select Texas, which seems to catch my eye, and the rest of these sheets will filter down. So earlier we talked about how to add some basic filters onto your worksheets, and those appear over here. But your sheets themselves can act as filters in a dashboard. Maybe I want to set this scatter plot as a filter and select all of the red dots that do not meet our goal. The rest of the dashboard filters down to show me just the data for these points. I also want to point out that those kind of category filters we added to this map earlier, they're currently still just applying to that map. But if we wanted to, we could head into that filter dropdown and apply this filter to other worksheets. So maybe I want all of these worksheets to be filtered with this same filter. Now I can head down into my furniture. I could then click on Texas, and I can really see where these subcategories are being unprofitable, which customers ordered them, and maybe I want to select these customers and view the underlying data. I can see who these customers were and what they ordered. So hopefully this helps you all with starting out in Tableau. We went over mapping, filtering, starting out with calculations, and parameters. So I'm going to head over into the chat window and the Q&A window to see if there are any questions here. Feel free to shoot your questions over in either that chat box or the Q&A window. It should be to the top right of your screen, I think. So yeah, I will be over there checking on questions.
Yeah, so Claire, I got a couple to me. Do you think you could go over how to do the calculated field example again?
Sure, yeah. So let's head back over to let me take off this filter. All right, so our calculated field right here is called profit KPI. And all I wanted to specify were kind of these categories that I created for different profit goals that we have for the Superstore company. So maybe your goal isn't 2,000, but this is an example. So all we're doing is some logic here. We're saying if this sum of profit is greater than 2,000, then I want it to say goal met. And you'll notice up here in our legends, we do have goal met appearing there. And I've actually assigned the color green to that value. And then I just specified another category called needs improvement and a third one that just says does not meet goal. You could add as many of these kind of categories in here as you'd like to. But keep in mind that this calculation is going to depend on whatever level of detail your sheet is at. So I'll explain what I mean here. Let me duplicate this sheet so we don't lose our work. And you'll notice here on the detail shelf, this little detail icon, I actually have customer name on detail. And remember, when we made this scatter plot, we got a single point that just told us the total sum of profit and the total sum of sales. And then we brought out customer name as that level of detail. But I don't have to do this by customer name. I could break this out by my manufacturers. And it's going to tell me a completely different story because each of these is telling me the sum of sales and the sum of profit for a different level of detail now. So hopefully that helps you a little bit with the calculated fields and kind of how your view can be affected. There are all different types of calculations you can write in Tableau. I wanted to point this one out specifically because it can kind of help give context to your data, especially if your company has certain goals that they're trying to meet. And of course, if you ever get lost and you're not sure how to use a specific calculation, definitely click around here in the different functions. We actually have articles about each and every one that you can find online.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people online within the community that you guys will see that are, will put sample calculations based on Superstore data specifically. So it's a really good way to kind of hop out there, Google what you're trying to answer, and then my guess, not going to guarantee, but my guess is you will see many responses in regards to Tableau help on that.
Yeah, that's how I learned Tableau. Was I would run into an issue I'd never come across before, and then I would Google it, and usually someone has asked that question before you in most cases. So you'll typically find what you're looking for.
So we have another question, Claire. I have a question regarding the map filter. Once added in a dashboard sheet and using it as a filter, is there a way that a map could filter another dashboard sheet?
So is the question, can you have the map filter other sheets on the same dashboard or other sheets on a different dashboard? Both answers are yes in either case. I guess I'll walk through both. So in this case, when we clicked on the map, we turned on this filter icon, and now the map is serving as a filter to filter the rest of the sheets on the dashboard. So remember, if I click on Texas, these are filtering down to only show me these customers who bought in Texas and these subcategories that were sold in Texas. Now, if we wanted to, we could have an action, a dashboard action, that allows us to click on Texas and filter a completely different sheet that doesn't even exist on the dashboard. And the way that we do that is up here in the dashboard menu, head to Actions. And you'll see these previously generated filters, and these are when we turned on the filter icon. But we can get very specific with these. And here I can, specify that I want the user to click on, that map sheet. And then I can have that target any sheet that exists in my workbook, whether it's on the dashboard or not. So this sheet 2 parentheses 2 doesn't exist on the dashboard, so we could do that. I'll click OK, OK. And now when I click on Texas, it's actually going to just direct me to that new sheet that doesn't exist on the dashboard, filtered down to just the Texas data. And you see here that that action filter has been applied. Any more questions?
Let's see, we have one here. Are you able to create an equation that pulls different numbers depending on date?
That pulls different numbers depending on dates. I'm not sure exactly what the use case there is.
Yeah, if you want to just provide a little more context on that question, we'll see if we can answer that. If you want to send me a message on here directly. Not you, Claire.
Yeah.
One other one we have, as soon as we'll get more context on that, is there a way to display a goal line based on the amount in the data itself?
Yep. So what I would do is, instead of adding in this kind of constant line, I would have something in my data that's like budget or goal or quota, something like that. And then back in that analytics pane, instead of choosing constant line or average line, choose your reference line. If I drag this out here, we're going to be able to specify, what that field is. Right now I don't have one, I just have sum of profit. But if I had quota, like a field I could reference called quota, we would be able to select it here. Click OK, and then that line is there. Now, on top of that, and on top of having a line that is dependent on the data, we also could then go into our KPI and have this be dependent on that field. So instead of actually specifying the number 2000 and 1000, we could just have this say reference our quota field. So hopefully that makes sense.
Let's see here, I just had another one. I'm just trying to find it. Is there a way, so when on the first visualization you showed filtering by region. Let's say I have sales teams and the regions aren't necessarily east, west, central, and north. Is there a way to create custom regions within Tableau?
Yes, very good question. So what I'm going to do here on our map is I can select multiple states this way, or I can just kind of control click on them. Oops, I didn't mean to select keep only. There we go. So I can select multiple states, and then here we get this tool tip that comes up with a bunch of menu options. And all I'm going to do is select the paperclip. And I'm going to do it on state and country. So what this is going to do is create a custom territory here. And over here to our right, we get a legend. Now, I'm probably going to want to edit the name of this to be something other than the list of the states, but I can edit it. Actually, over here to the right, I want to point out that we get a brand new field with this paperclip icon on it, showing us that we have a brand new group. So it's not going to change any of the underlying data that you have. It's just going to create a new one. So we can edit this group. We can see that our first one contains these states and other contains these other states. But I can select them here and group them here as well. So you can either do it from the map or from this kind of grouping dialog box. And maybe I rename this to like south or something, whatever makes sense for you. So hopefully that helps you guys out.
Another question, this might be situational for filtering and calculations. It seems that you can filter on a lot of different items within Tableau. Is there best practices around how many filters you should put on a chart and how does it affect performance?
That's a really, really good question. So let's head into one of these other sheets. Now, there are different kinds of, I guess, let me show you in this way. Let's open up a new sheet, and I can bring out customer name, and we're going to see every single customer in this data set. Versus if I bring out our region, there's really just 4. Now, you kind of have to think about how much this is going to impact Tableau, because when you're doing something like calculations or filtering, Tableau is going to have to either perform a calculation for every single one of those detailed options, or it's going to have to, for the filter example, send a query back to your data source for every single filter option. So in the case of this scatter plot, for example, if I wanted to filter by manufacturer, and I show that filter, we're going to see this giant filter over here with tons of options. It's called high cardinality, with a lot of unique options to choose from. So if you have too many of these, Tableau really is probably going to be slow because you're asking for all of those different queries to be sent back to your data source. So other than the cardinality issue, something else we recommend is going for non-enumerated filters. So if you absolutely have to have a high cardinality field like this, it is best practice to go with something like, let's say, multiple values custom list. So this is an option, a filter kind of format, where all of the options aren't listed out already. You actually have to type in something like this, and you're going to, just filter down to whatever you've typed in. But it means that Tableau hasn't had to list all of those out for you as filter options. So that's non-enumerated filters, whereas enumerated would be the entire list. Hopefully that helps you out.
Great, let me see here. I'm not seeing any directly. Oh, wait, hold on. I have another one. Got some clarification on the time date question I was asking earlier. So I'm using data that has discount changes on certain dates and would like to see historic changes of prices depending on the change of discount at a certain date. Do I have to do I have to ask each question individual, or is there a way to filter by the date or discount?
So I'm not sure that I understand the scenario, but what I would do is use your dates in some way, whether that is on a sheet or it's on a filter shelf. So in this case, we could take order date, drag that up to filters. We can do lots of different date filtering. So for example, if I choose relative date and click OK, we're actually going to, let me show that filter. We're going to get this option where we can select, previous months, last 3 months, etc. I don't actually have previous 3 months for this data set, so let's edit that filter and I'll show you the range of dates option. Click OK, and now you can actually filter by different ranges of dates. But you can also just build out a sheet using your dates. So maybe let's set this at the month level. Let's look at profits over time. And now if you have this sheet in a dashboard, let's go ahead and stick that in there. What we can do now is set this as a filter. And instead of actually, messing around with a range filter like this one, we can just kind of select the date ranges that we want to filter down to. Hopefully that helps you. I'm not really sure about the specific situation, but
yeah. And Celeste, I'll follow up with you after this call just to make sure we answer the question exactly to where you're wanting it to be, just to make sure we're interpreted correctly. Any other questions? Feel free to enter them in the chat.
I have a question coming in. Seems Tableau has many visualizations. How do I select the best? Great question. I'm glad you asked that because I would have forgotten to show you all this. Let's open up a new sheet and say I know what kind of data I'm interested in seeing. So I want to look at my ship modes and my subcategories, and I want to see profit, but I don't really know how I want to visualize that. Way up at the top right, we have our Show Me menu. And Tableau is going to try and suggest, based on visual best practices, what the best way to visualize this would be. So right now, it's telling me a bar chart. So if I click that, I can look at it. I can see if that's actually useful for me. I can rearrange things, see if that changes anything. Or I can just keep clicking around until I find something that I like. But this is a really, really great way to get started if you don't know how to start. And one thing to realize with the Show Me tab, though, is that it is just kind of a starter menu. It's not everything that you can do in Tableau. By a long shot, actually, if you head into Tableau Public, you're going to see the art of the possible and everything that you can do in Tableau. This is really just a place to start. So hopefully you guys find this helpful and can learn from there.
Another thing I like to mention on that question also is there's no one way, there's no correct way to necessarily showcase your data. It
Right.
it all comes down to what type of insights are you trying to have your audience gain from what you're doing, and how do they want to consume it, right? Because based on your audience, based on who you're presenting to, they might be looking for their data in different ways. And this is another good opportunity for you to hop around, Tableau Public or other, different sites out there where you can look at how other people are doing visualizations, not necessarily to do a one-for-one copy, but kind of give you an idea of, okay, these are how other people have thought about it. Maybe I'll incorporate this and not this, et cetera. So, just, think about it from the whole level, like what am I presenting, who am I presenting to, and what do I want them to learn from it?
Yeah, you said a couple of really great things in there. First of all, on Tableau Public, a lot of times you can just download the workbook and see how something was built. So it's a great way to learn. And also, I think it's really cool that, these visual best practices are just kind of built in. Tableau is trying to suggest something. But then again, there isn't one way to visualize something properly. You might visualize something one way and then see it a different way and see a completely different story behind your data just by seeing it a different way.
Yep, good point too. All right, well, I think that's all we got from today. Hopefully you found today's session valuable. I will be uploading the recording to the PowerPoint or to the portal that I put together with all the recordings, as well as sending it out via email. So if you can't access it via the portal, you'll have that as well. And as always, don't hesitate, and please reach out to us with any questions. And thank you so much for presenting today, Claire.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Have a great day.